Hi, my name's Tash and this is episode 2 of my channel Mostly Knitting. I've got a few things in today's video. I've got 4 finished objects to show, 3 works in progress, 2 coming up plans and 1 faux from the vault, which I'm actually wearing. I thought I'll finish off with some purchases that I made. No yarn purchases, but just some patterns, and then just a little bit at the end on personal stuff if you want to stick around. Alright, so I'll start off with my finished objects. I finished Birds of a Feather, which is the title of this episode. So here it is. Hope I get it around the right way. No, that's the wrong way. It's really large, quite large. It's got 1.5 skeins of fingering weight and a full skein of lace weight. So I think probably the way I'll end up wearing it is most likely just like I wear most of my shawls, just like a scarf, just like that. You know, the tails are super long, so I'll probably just knot them or something, but I don't like having a cold neck, so this will be great in winter. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. I really like it. So I used Skein Uptown Sock, 1.5 skeins, and Skein Mohair silk lace in the Wisp colourway. I had 58 grams left of the Uptown Sock, so I'll probably use that in some kind of stripy sweater or some colour work. I've got my show notes down here, so I'll be looking down just occasionally, but yeah, I'll try and be looking directly ahead a bit more often. Okay, so number 2 is the Gusset heel socks by Wendy Johnson. I'm really happy with how they came out. They used, I think it was 52 grams for the pair of socks, and I've cast on another one. Yeah, I just wanted some more shorty socks in my wardrobe. And the third thing that I finished is the Musselburgh hat by Ysolda Teague. I forgot to mention that the yarn that I used for this one. This was Malabrigo Sock in the Cote d'Azur colourway, which is a really nice navy blue. And I'll try it on quickly for you. Hats don't really, I don't know, I don't think I have a head for hats, but yeah, I'm happy with it, how it came out, and I used almost the whole skein. So yeah, it's like 32 degrees Celsius here today, so I won't be wearing that anytime soon, which is, I don't know, like around 90 Fahrenheit. And the last thing that I finished, actually I don't have it to show you. I'm going to try experimenting, put a little picture up here, because I did take a picture of it. It was a twisted rib hat, not a pattern, just I cast on 144 stitches on a 3.25mm needle, and I used Cherry Tree Heel Sock. This is the leftovers that I have here in the burgundy colourway, and that was a present for my mum. It was her birthday a couple of days ago, so I cast it on and knit it in a few days and finished it and already gave it away. But I'll try and put a picture up there. This sock yarn has a really tight twist, which means it's great for socks. I wasn't so sure if I would like it for a hat, and I definitely don't like this kind of yarn for colour work. But it was fine for the hat actually. It ended up a little bit on the large side, but I think my mum might just fold over the brim. I think it's workable. Anyway, she tried it on when I gave it to her, and she seemed happy, or she might have just been being nice to me. Anyway, so they're my finished objects, because I finished 4 things. I was pretty excited about starting something new, and I wanted to get a new sweater on the needles. So I did some swatching for Garden Gate, and I was planning to make it a dress, and I used this, I swatched with this yarn here, which is the Woolen Rabbit Airy, and it's a fingering weight yarn. It's got really good yardage, like 1 skein was 123 grams, and 3 skeins is 1,150 meters, like maybe 1,300 yards, so really, really good yardage. So I knew I could get a dress out of it, especially with color work. But when I swatched it, I just really wasn't happy with either of these 2 colors. That was swatched on 3.75mm needles, and I thought that was a little bit too open. I didn't mind the color. This was 3.5mm needles, so that was a lot better. But yeah, I just didn't really, there wasn't enough contrast for me, and I thought if I'm going to go to all that trouble to do color work, I want to be able to see the contrast. So I ended up putting that aside, and I actually cast on a pattern called Ilha. Actually, I'll put it up. So I am learning. I will endeavour eventually to be able to put up photos up here. I am going to try that, but for now I'll just show you here. That's Ilha by Orlane. I'm not going to try and say her last name. And it's such a pretty jumper. It even has this detail on this side, which I think is really gorgeous. I'm not sure if I'll do that detail, because if I'm turning it into a dress and there's going to be increases going out, actually maybe that might be quite nice. Anyway, yeah, so it's got this sort of cable running down the side. I think that is actually really pretty. So I cast that on, and that was one of my new purchases as well. I bought the pattern, and I used this yarn that I was going to use for Garden Gate. I've used it for Ilha. I don't even know if that's how you say it, but anyway, this is how it's coming along. I just started it yesterday, and it was so addictive. Like, I was just really enjoying it. So it's got some cables and some, you know, pretty simple lace here, and then I think it's got some raglan increases, and then you'll split off for the sleeves. I'll keep it short sleeved, and then I'll just do A-line to make it out into a dress. Yeah, and this swatch was handy actually, because I'll still, I'm using it on a 3.75mm needle, because for a dress I kind of wanted it a little bit drapey. So I've sort of got a bit of an idea of my gauge from this part of the swatch, and that will help me to work out if I need to make it, you know, make it a little bit bigger or adjust in the sizing. And a little bit later in the video I'll talk a little bit about how I adjust for sizing if my gauge doesn't match the pattern gauge. Anyway, so I'm really happy with how that's coming along, and I'm kind of a bit addicted to that. That's probably where most of my attention will go. The other things that I'm working on is Dotted Rays by Stephen West. So I've made a bit of progress on this too. And yeah, I'm really happy with how that's striping up. So I had the, this is the, it's a Circus Tonic Handmade Soiree fingering in Whisper is the light colour, and Cape Gannet is the darker colour. And yeah, it has this really pretty I-cord edging. What I think I'll do is I'm about halfway through the second skein, and I was going to add a third skein and make it a really large shawl, but when I looked at people's projects that use 3 skeins, it's massive, and I quite actually like how this is going. So, and like I might be quite happy just to finish it on this. So to make sure it's big enough, what I'll do is because I've got it on a really long cable, but even then it still doesn't fit. So what I'll do is I'll sort of knit half of it onto another long cable, because I've got so many needles. And this is on a 4mm needle. Won't be hard, I'll find another long 4mm needle and knit it halfway. So I've got half on one cable, half on the other cable, and then I'll sort of try it on towards the end, because you don't have to make, I do have to make up my mind up when I've got about 30 grams to go, because I'll either start striping in, because I did decide to do that. I will stripe in the third colour if I add a third colour. So when I've got about 30 grams to go, I'll put half of it on so it's on 2 needles, try it on, and if I already like kind of how it's going, then I'll just stick with the two skeins. But I did read somewhere that it's going to take about 10 grams for the I-cord bind off, so I need to make sure I leave enough yarn for that, because I do not want to run out, and I don't have any more of anything that remotely matches. So yeah, I'll leave myself plenty of so if it's big enough, I'll just stick with the 2 skeins. So that's my second WIP. So I've got Ilha and Dotted Rays, and the third work in progress is another sock from the toe up. Again, fingering weight Gusset heel socks by Wendy Johnson. So I just did the Judy's Magic cast on of 28 stitches. I increased to 64, and then I'm just working up the foot now. And so that's really easy for me to, that can be my playground Judy knitting, because I didn't cast on a Musselburgh because I did that other hat for my mum. So I don't have a hat on the needles at the moment. But this yarn, this is the Coop Socks by Coop Knits, and I bought 1 skein. So, and it's got 52 grams in it. So given that my other socks were 52 grams, I'm hoping that I can get a whole pair of, and this was $12 Australian, which is like $8 US. So if I can get a whole pair of socks out of that, I'll be really happy. And because I'm doing it toe up, I weighed the yarn, it's exactly 52 grams. So I'll be able to work on that and just stop it like a little bit less than 26 grams just to make sure. So yeah, so and it seems quite nice actually, like I'm enjoying knitting with it. So that was from my local yarn store. I bought it a while ago. Okay, so they're my 3 whips. My plans, my upcoming plans. So I already have an idea of another pair of socks, just because when I finished the hat with this burgundy yarn, it reminded me of this pattern called the Climb Socks by Jane Richmond. They are so cute. So they're a bit longer, and I just love the color. Like I love the sort of the white, they look really sort of sporty. The white, the gray, and then the white and burgundy. So, and I just happen to have, which is so handy, some leftover, I've got more than this, I've got about twice this amount, Louet Gems fingering weight, and this is Cannon Hill's hand dyed, let me see, William Merino fingering, which I've had in for a long time. That was left over from a top that I made. So I think I can make the Climb socks. So that will be my next pair of socks after I finish, and they will be a bit longer. Like I'll do them like the pattern said. And I mean, I'll probably just do, anyway, maybe I'll do it like the pattern, or I'll just follow the coloring. So I'll do that as my next pair of socks. And another plan was, I already mentioned Miss Urena by Caitlin Hunter. I won't cast that on just yet. I might wait till I get past the yoke of Ilha, because if I spread myself too thin, then I just don't feel like I'm making progress on anything. So I'll get past the yoke on Ilha, and then I'll start Miss Urena. So this is Geronit's version of Miss Urena, and I just think it's so pretty. So I've got Tosh Merino Light for that, and I've got about 1.5 skeins in the charcoal colorway, and this is a Hedgehog Fibres skinny singles. So I'll do those 2 together. So this will be the main color, and this will be the contrast. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and that will just be a top because I only have 1.5 skeins of this one. That one's really interesting actually. That pattern, the gauge on it is like 20 stitches over 4 inches on a 3.5mm needle. And when I knit Tosh Merino Light, I don't get anything like 20 stitches on a 3.5mm needle. I get more like 25. So, and obviously that's a bit denser. The pattern itself is meant to be quite light and airy, so I'll either go up a needle size. I might even swatch for that one. I usually don't swatch with Tosh Merino Light because I have knit so many projects with Tosh Merino Light. I know I like it on a 3.5mm needle. Although if it was a dress, I might use a 3.75. Yeah, so I don't think I could imagine knitting this bigger than a 4mm needle, so I might swatch it on a 4mm and just sort of see, and then I'll adjust the pattern a little bit if I need to get the right size. Yeah, so they're my 2 plans coming up. And my faux from the vault, I'm actually wearing it. This is the Darkwater sweater by Jennifer Steingass, and I made it into a dress. And so I used Collinette Jitterbug, which is 100% merino yarn, and it's a sport weight yarn. I found the yoke was really long in the sweater, and I was a bit worried that the yoke would sort of end up down here, which I didn't want in a dress. So the pattern itself, I'll show you what the pattern, I mean obviously I'm wearing it, but what it looks like is there. And I took out, because I was a bit worried about the yoke being really long, you can see that there's the colour work at the top and the bottom is just real. That probably went really quiet when I had that in front of the microphone. The colour work was really long, but the top and the bottom of the colour work were just a few blips, like a few of these little dots. So I just cut out the top 3 rows and the bottom 3 rows, and then that worked out fine. That was, because this yarn was a sport weight, I find and the pattern was for a fingering weight, I find sometimes like if I use a slightly heavier yarn, which worked fine for my stitch gauge, but my row gauge was a little bit off, so I really did need to cut out those rows. And I think also it was designed as a slightly longer in the yoke. So yeah, so I ended up just following the pattern aside from cutting out the top and the last few rows of the colour work, and I just moved the increases up a little bit. It has some short rows in the back, so you can see there's some short rows there. There's a bit more room before you start the colour work compared to the front. And I'll stand back so you can sort of see it a little bit. And I just made it to about knee length. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's one of my favourites. One of my students at school, I was wearing this dress and they're like, you always wear that dress. I was like, well, I made it, I like it. So maybe I need to make another one of these. Yeah, so I wear my dresses a lot to school because they're so comfortable. It's like a knit dress is just like wearing pajamas. In terms of comfort. The only downside is no pockets, but yeah, I'm happy with how it came out, and I think I actually could see myself making another one of these. All right, so that's my faux from the vault. I think I made it a few years ago. Let me see, and it's held up really well. So this is Collinette Jitterbug. As my student said, I wear it a lot, and I finished it in March 2019. So this is nearly 4 years old, and you know, I can't see really any pilling or anything. I suppose I should look at the butt. Yeah, it's getting a little bit matted on the butt, but oh well, that's okay. People shouldn't be looking at my butt anyway. So that's my faux from the vault. My next section was on a tip. So I remembered when I talked about ranunculus last week, I didn't mention anything about my gauge, and my gauge was actually quite a bit tighter than the pattern gauge. So it's written for the gauge on the pattern. You can actually use any kind of weight yarn. You can use lace weight all the way up to worsted, but the gauge is 14 stitches, no matter which yarn you're using. My gauge was 16 stitches over 4 inches. So because I have more stitches over 4 inches, each stitch is smaller, which means whatever size I knit is going to come out smaller than the size of the finished object mentioned in the pattern. So I knit the smaller size, which had a finished bust measurement of 46 inches. Now my bust is 32 inches, so that was going to be 14 inches of ease, and I knew I didn't want that much ease anyway. So to work out and I might actually, what I'll do is I'll write it down, and that will be another test if I can put a photo up here of how I work out. If I knit the 46 inch size, this is my gauge, this is the pattern gauge, what is the size that I'm going to end up with, which obviously I want to know. So what I did was 46 inches, I multiply by the pattern gauge, which is 14, and divide by my gauge, which was 16. And that got me to 40.25 inches. And I just measured my sweater the other day, and it's 40 inches. So, you know, give or take, it's hard to sort of measure a quarter of an inch. So it turned out true to the size that I was expecting. That was 8 inches of ease, which for me was, you know, what I was going for. So if you want to know if your gauge is different to the pattern gauge, you take whatever pattern size you're making, multiplied by the pattern gauge, divide by your gauge, that will be the size that you end up with. And if you're happy with that in terms of ease, that's the size. If that's too big or too small, if it's too big, go down a size. If it's too small, go up a size. Okay, so that's my little tip on that one. So my purchases, I mentioned that I already purchased the pattern Ilha, and I also bought Misurina. That wasn't in my library, but Caitlin Hunter has a thing where if you buy 3 patterns, you get the 4th free, which is probably a good, you know, strategy for sales, because I ended up buying some patterns that I wasn't ready to make yet, but I thought they're not in my library and I thought were really pretty. So I ended up buying these ones here. You can see Oxa and her Easy V and Virgil. That was like a little summer knit that looked really pretty. So there was my 4. So I don't know when I'll knit those, but now they're in my library. Sometimes I forget that I do that, and I forget that I already have a pattern. So like I was looking at my library and I saw, oh, I bought the Weekend Delight. I didn't even realize and I must have bought that when I bought Junction and Birds of a Feather and So Faded. Anyway, so obviously that tip sort of works for Andrea Mowry. That must have been Andrea. Yeah, that was Andrea Mowry. Maybe she had the same thing, some kind of, or maybe it was just on a special. Anyway, Caitlin Hunter has that where you buy 3, get the 4th free, and Jennifer Steingass has buy 2, get the 3rd free. So I usually try to buy them in batches of 3 or 4 if I buy from them, because you know how you get to know a designer, you like their look, and you sort of know their fit and the way things work. So yeah, so I'm really happy with those plans coming up. Sewing, I haven't actually done any, and I was going to fix those black pants, but then as I was looking at it and I was showing you and I saw there was another hole, that the rip was right on the pocket, and I was like, you know what, I actually really like these pants, I want them fixed properly, so I sent them off to get fixed properly, and I'm looking forward to getting them back. So no sewing yet, but hopefully soon. Okay, so that's it for the whole knitting part of the show. What am I at? About 20 minutes. So I thought I'd just add a little bit of personal stuff at the end, and then that way you can just turn off if that's not interesting for you. So I thought I'd just share a little bit more about myself, about my week. So I did park run this morning. That's something I do each week. It's a 5K run, and that was really nice. It's a good way to start the day. It's at 8 AM, and there's park runs all around the world. And I usually meet up with friends there. Most of my running, I run by myself. I usually run like every other day, not a lot, just like 5 or 6 Ks, which is about 3 or 4 miles. Yeah, and I find it really good for my mental health and physical health. And then this afternoon, I'm going to be watching my son play baseball. He's 15. The rest of my week, so it was my last week before going back to school with the students. I had 2 staff days on Tuesday and Wednesday, just getting everything ready. I still don't feel quite ready. So it's Saturday, I forgot to mention that, it's Saturday the 28th of January. And so yeah, on Monday the 30th, I'm back at school with the kids. So I had a couple of staff days, and yeah, I've still got a bit of work to do this weekend to just make sure my lessons are ready for Monday. It was my mum's birthday on Thursday, so we had her and her sister and my brother over for dinner, which was really nice, good family time. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else. On Monday, my son had some of his friends over. They were all screaming and gaming. I visited my dad. I did that last Saturday, and I'll go visit him tomorrow. He's in an aged care facility. So I went and visited him with my son, and we played Sequence. We're a big board game family and card games. So it's hard for my dad. He has diabetes and emphysema, and it's hard for him to get around, but he can always play games. So, and with Sequence, we don't even have to go anywhere. We can just play it in his room. So we did that, which was nice, and I'll go see him tomorrow. Yeah, so that's I'm hoping I might be able to do these videos either once a week or once a fortnight in term time. Things get quite busy writing exams and marking and all that kind of stuff, and also the kids going back to school and their activities starting. I have 2 children who aren't driving yet, so there's still a lot of running around, which is fine. Like, you know, you get a lot of time with your kids in the car, which is nice, and when that's gone, it's gone, I guess. So yeah, so I don't mind that, but it does take time. So I might end up, I'll see how I go. I am really enjoying this, and I'm hoping to keep it up either weekly or fortnightly, but we'll just see. Yeah, so I think that's it. I hope everyone's having a great week, and you're staying cool if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, or warm if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks.